The AVerMedia PW515 is an iterative update on the 2020 model, the PW513. It improves the noise levels here in the background and in the dark areas. It improves the sharpness, gives you autofocus or a manual focus range instead of fixed focus, and otherwise is mostly the same. But it's kind of nice for the same price that the previous camera used to cost. Only, is it still worth buying a webcam? I'm EposVox, the stream professor, and I am very impressed with this webcam. Opening up the PW513, you see that it has a big chunky vent on the back of it to help keep this thing cool, which made me think it had some crazy additional specs or something. I think they just needed to keep it a little bit more cool in general, but they did make some nice features here that I just kind of wish were in the previous model. We've now looked at two 4K webcams from AVerMedia in the past, the PW513 and the PW510, which wasn't really ever formally released. Like, you could kind of get it through some conference bundles, but it was never a consumer product, and I was told it would be like $400 or $500 or something crazy if you did buy it. Obviously, that's not reasonable. But tuning the manual settings and getting it looking nice and neat here, it looks pretty decent. Now, I do have a color grade applied in Resolve, so this will be with and without it. So currently this is with, some tweaks, which you can do freely in OBS. DaVinci Resolve's free, whatever, so it's not like this is inaccessible. But here's what it looks like normal. You can see it still kind of struggles with white balance. And that's kind of my sticking point here with all webcams. But I think we're finally getting to a point where webcams are competent enough to compete with like basic phone camera stuff and like basic cameras. But it's taken a very, very long time to get here. Specs-wise, we're looking at the standard Sony Starvis CMOS sensor stuff that most of the webcams these days are using. It does 4K 30 FPS in MJPEG or 1080p 60 FPS in YUY2 and NV12. So I would still love to see NV12 4K 30 as a webcam since the Camlink 4K can do it. However, I think that's still running into some weird, I forget the direct show limitation that the Sub 2R camera people kept bringing up, in that they could do 4K 30 in the MMF Media, Microsoft Media or Mixed Media Foundation format, but not the direct show device access that OBS uses. I still don't know where any of that stands or why that's the case, but that's a thing. And of course, it's UVC, so it's plug and play as a webcam, of course, on any operating system, or at least on Chrome OS, Mac OS, and Windows. It probably works on Linux too. However, this version of Cam Engine only runs on Windows. A 1080p 60 video test and comparison to the PW513 will be on my Stream Guides channel, linked below, just as a separate sample, because I can't do 60 FPS and 30 FPS in the same video. To get the most out of the webcam, you should download AVerMedia's Cam Engine 4 software. Now, this is pretty neat. You can set it up in, if I go to profile here, you can set it up in video conferencing or live stream mode. I have it in live stream mode at the moment. And then you just get access to actually multiple virtual cameras. So here I have the PW513 added as well, but it's still in auto mode, so don't compare for that yet. And then you have basic controls over brightness, contrast, hue, saturation. But in the advanced tab, you get 4 different exposure modes. Now, auto exposure, if you have normal lighting, completely ghosts you out. If you end up with no lighting at all, it kind of looks okay. However, if you have no lighting on at all, the high dynamic range mode, while looking terrible with the lighting on, is actually the way you want to go. It's going to be a little bit more noisy, but it's the way to go. Then there's face exposure, which will find your face in the scene and expose based on that. It takes a little bit to kick in. It gets a little dark for my taste. You can crank up the brightness to kind of make up for it, but I think it would be perfect if it stopped here. Actually, yeah, you can see it starts getting darker. Needs some work there. And then, of course, you have manual exposure, with exposure slider being your shutter speed and the gain slider being ISO. Obviously, you want to get as close to the exact exposure as you want with the exposure slider without making your lights flicker or you too ghosty. And then the gain is used as a last resort because it will just add noise and blow out your image. Then, of course, you have a field of view, which is basically just a digital zoom. I hate that cameras call that this. You have anti-flicker based on your region, 50 or 60 hertz, and auto white balance. My big complaint here is that white balance, once again, is based on temperature and not, there should be 2 sliders. Temperature and tint make up white balance. It's 2 sliders, temperature and tint. Come on, webcam companies, we need both. Even the Elgato Facecam doesn't have this. I don't know if the sensors just don't allow for it. I don't know what's going on, but to set white balance, you need both, which is why when I click from auto to manual, it looks completely different because auto is still kind of adjusting for it. But even here, I'm really green. So we're going to switch back to my Resolve color grading when we switch to the full screen. You also get options for things like face smoothing and skin tone correction. Face smoothing, of course, will just blur the entire image. So in terms of desirability there. Skin tone, I don't really know what it's doing. It's adjusting all you know, basically brightening up all of a certain color range there. I'm not a huge fan of it. You get special effects if you sign in for face tracking, character effects, things like that, which is kind of cool if that's what you're into, and I believe you can hotkey them as well. And then of course this webcam has autofocus and manual focus. This is a big improvement over the PW513, which was locked off to a specific focus range. So for example, if I put this up close to the camera, it's kind of going to focus on it, get it back. We're going to focus back here. It's not going to be super pulsy like other webcams, which is pretty cool, but you can get manual focus. Now, if we zoom in here with the tool, we can zoom right on my eyes and my facial hair and adjust the manual focus to set it exactly where I am. And now we're perfectly in focus, and I never have to worry about it again. Very cool. And of course, they have some EPTZ stuff, which is really powerful because you can control it with gestures and things like that. We'll be covering all the details and things like that in my full tutorial companion video up on Nebula. If you're interested, link will be in the description below. But let's get to some comparisons versus the PW513 because it's kind of interesting. All right, here we have the AVerMedia PW515 and the 513 side by side. They're both set to manual exposure settings in Cam Engine 4 and mostly, you know, no fancy tricks or anything like that turned on. I did want to point out some of the differences right away. One of the big complaints that a lot of people pushed against the PW513 when it launched that I never really had trouble with, and I did a whole follow-up video about, was the background noise or the general image noise overall. And I think it came down to mostly exposure settings and some things like that, but some people were pretty serious about it. But in Cam Engine with the PW513, you do actually have a manual image noise removal setting available to you, which I would recommend using. So if I switch to that in Cam Engine, I can pull up image noise reduction. Right now it's off. So this is the PW513 with no image noise reduction at all. And then I can turn it on from low to medium to high. And of course, this is going to affect the sharpness of the image because it's removing detail from the image where the noise might be. Medium is the default and seems to be the sweet spot. Low maintains most of your sharpness. If you only have a little bit of noise, you could leave it there. I personally wouldn't mess with it that much. I would turn it off, but if you are someone who's been complaining about the noise, you have that available to you. However, the PW515, the new one, has 3D noise reduction running on board, and I'm imagining that's what the extra heat sinks and venting is for on the camera, because it is doing all of that kind of in real time on the camera hardware itself rather than wanting your computer to do it or relying on like NVIDIA Broadcast or something like that, which is really cool. It is not something you can toggle on and off, but you still get a fairly sharp image from it due to them using whatever, you know, 3D noise reduction method instead of that. You can also notice the difference in sharpness in my face here. If we zoom in a little bit, the PW513 has a locked fixed focus range, and if I remember right, it's kind of more back here rather than where most people sit for a webcam, especially for a wide-angle webcam like this. So the PW515 should be a little bit sharper. You do get that autofocus, and you have the ability to tune the sharpness a little bit more. In terms of dynamic range, it's kind of hard to see because the framing can't be perfect because these are wide boy webcams. But you do get a little bit more background exposure here, like a little bit more dynamic range in my background with the 515 than the 513. But it's a minimal difference. But overall, this is very much an iterative update. Like this, to me, is pretty significant, just like usability upgrades on the hardware side. The noise reduction on the 515 is basically set up for everyone who had issues with noise on the 513 and couldn't get their exposure or lighting right. It helps with that, although we saw with the high dynamic range test that it doesn't fix it if it's just a completely noisy mess. I'm impressed for what you're getting. This is very compelling. If you were someone who thought the 513 was a great webcam at $250 a couple years ago and you hadn't pulled the trigger yet, I would get this instead. However, the PW513 is now only $170-ish, so you can get it significantly cheaper now, which is an option available to you as well. So very, very impressed here. I did also want to call out that they have since also they also have a PW513 dual, which is a dual lens webcam for like two-person vlogging. I still haven't got my hands on that. I really want to mess with that, but this is pretty cool. I think we're reaching a point where, you know, I don't think we're going to see drastic webcam improvements. Like this has been 2 years since the PW513 launched, because it launched in 2020, if I'm remembering right. It's been 2 years since that camera launched, and all we're getting from like a new full price camera here is iterative. Like this is basically the same hardware. We just get a focus system added some cost, and then the noise reduction and stuff. Like, there are improvements, but this isn't a radical generational leap, and I don't think we're going to see that for a while. And I'm still not convinced that the webcam market can handle that. But get subscribed, because I do have some looks at the Lumia webcam, the Dell webcam. I've been behind on my webcam coverage, and I wanted to get this video knocked out before I get to those, because I think this is kind of the basis for comparison moving forward. And it's going to be interesting. So get subscribed for that. Otherwise, go check out the tutorial video if you want hands-on to learn the details. I'm posting a lot more detailed tutorials that don't necessarily perform great on YouTube these days, because it's all about the suggested views and all of that over on my own streaming site, Nebula. I built it with my creator friends. My videos are higher quality, they're ad-free, and I have a lot of custom, exclusive content like dedicated tutorials, extended cuts of videos, companion videos, and all of that. And so we are doing a Tutorial Tuesday series where it's just hands-on hardcore tutorials, not worrying about YouTube optimizations or whatever, just getting you lots of hands-on, step-by-step instruction. And so I'm going to walk through the whole Cam Engine software, and we're going to get that rolling over there. The best way you can sign up for that is with our bundle with CuriosityStream. I talk about it all the time. CuriosityStream is a website with a library of thousands of documentary and entertaining content, including the David Attenborough collection if you like animals and nature documentaries and things like that. They have lots of great content over there. If they enjoyed what we're doing over on Nebula, wanted to partner up and empower creators like myself to share a whole lot of extra content that we otherwise kind of just wouldn't be able to post if we were only posting what worked here on YouTube. So that's curiositystream.com/epos. You get a year of all of CuriosityStream's content and every one of us who posts over on Nebula for $14.79 a year. That's less than $15 for 12 months of great content, and the best way to support my channel and help me do what I do and provide value to you. So go check that out, and if you're looking for more webcam coverage, check out the playlist link in the description below. Remember, be kind, rewind.